Hello, welcome. So in this video, we'll learn what is React. So we will first visit this official website react.dev. So this is react.dev website, and as per their claim, essentially what is React? So it is a library, a JavaScript library for web and native user interfaces. So essentially what it means is this is a JavaScript library. That means something which is ready-made available to us. For what purpose? For creating user interfaces, the UI, the user interfaces for web and native applications. So for web, essentially, like for example, YouTube, right? So this is a web application, yeah. So for building such web application, the user interface of the web application, yeah, React is going to provide us some ready-made library kind of thing, yeah. So that's what this is talking about. It's a JavaScript library for user interfaces development for web. Similarly, we have React Native. So using React Native, which is an extension of React, which is built on top of React, so you can actually develop native apps for your mobile, like your iOS and Android apps, right? So that you can develop. So essentially, in case of native apps, earlier we used to develop, for example, if it is an iOS, we used to develop using iOS native languages like Swift. And if it is an Android, we used to develop using Java, Android, or Kotlin type of languages, right? But if you are a JavaScript developer, using this JavaScript library, which is React, and an extension of it, React Native, you can actually develop the native applications. So you can reuse your skills, JavaScript skills, to actually develop both front end as well as native applications. Essentially, it is a library for user interfaces. It is unlike Angular, which is another framework in comparison to React, but Angular is a full-fledged framework. It is a full stack framework, yeah. Whereas React is essentially going to be primarily aimed for user interface developments only, yeah. And then it has some ecosystem. Um, Basically, you can use certain framework which is developed on top of React, which will give you capability to develop full stack applications like Next.js, Remix type of thing. But React in general is a simple user interface development library. Yeah? So if somebody is asking you what is React.js, you just need to say it is a JavaScript library for web and native user interface development. Yeah. Now, what I can do with this? So essentially I can create user interfaces. So create user interfaces, but the catchy thing here is from components. So I can develop any type of user interfaces like this, but using components. Now, when we start learning about components, we'll understand. But in simple words, if I wanted to explain you, normally if I'm developing complex user interfaces, be it like Airbnb or YouTube, this kind of thing, then even though it looks very simple, but if you start developing it, there is a lot of complexity here. Like you have a video, and when you just hover the cursor on top of this video started playing, and then you have content here, and then you have some views which are basically a dynamic view coming from basically backend database, when it was uploaded, etc. Right? So there is a lot of information here, yeah. And if I wanted to develop this in a simple JavaScript way, I can do it, but then it becomes very complicated. Yeah, it is like, for example, you have a high-rise building, yeah, and basically, if that high-rise building, like you're staying in 25th floor, yeah, you can always walk up to your floor using stairs, but you can use lift also, yeah. So you can walk or you can use lift. So which one is easy, yeah? So that way, if you wanted to actually develop this whole stuff using JavaScript, you can still do it, but that becomes very, very, very complicated as and when your complexity of your project increases. For example, if it is simple hello world, simple to do application, I can do it with JavaScript, yeah. But then a little more complicated, like this YouTube, Airbnb type of thing, then using simple JavaScript becomes very complicated. That's where we start looking at a little more support from libraries, so that I need not worry about basic things. Library gives me all the ready-made tools through which I can start building the applications very fast. Yeah. So React, there is Angular, there is Vue.js. There are different types of players in this area. All of them talk about something called components. So components are essentially like if you have a complicated thing, and if you can actually break it and make it simple, yeah, that's a component. For example, I have items, like for example, I have different food items, yeah, and I have to prepare food. So using various ingredients, right, I can actually start preparing the food. So ingredients are like the components here. So I just need to initially worry about how to procure the ingredients. Once I have all the ingredients, then I have to start looking at how to actually use those ingredients, mix them appropriately, like how much tablespoon of salt that I have to use, how much chili powder I have to use. Based on that, by mixing them appropriately and then cooking them, I can actually prepare the food, right? But then ingredients are very important, and those are the basic things that you need for preparing the food. Like that, in our software development also, any complicated software, if you are trying to build, right, we will try to look at what are the ingredients of this software. For example, I may have in this YouTube, right, there is a video player here, there is some text written here, and there are some views related information coming from backend database. So many information, right? And there are certain options available here. So I can think about this one particular piece related to one video as kind of a section. And in this section itself, there are smaller items here, different small items, right? And these are essentially the components. So the way we think about is, okay, this entire UI is very complicated, but if I start splitting this UI, the complicated UI into smaller pieces, I have one section. Like that, different sections, right? By just changing the data, I can actually have different sections here. And all of these sections are very much similar. It's just that different data is here, right? So if I now know how to develop this one section, I can repeat this. Yeah. And even in this one section, I have a video player, I have some other things. So now this video player is one component. Yeah. So I have to just develop this video player. Uh, and once I develop this video player, I can use it anywhere. Yeah. So this is how basically a software development or a thinking behind software development goes. So normally React or any other similar UI frameworks, so they will help you to actually start thinking in terms of components. And once you have components developed, then composing those components or putting them in appropriate way, you can start creating more complex user interfaces. So React is one such thing which help you to start building components. Yeah. Like for example here, like this is one component, like the YouTube component, right? YouTube, whatever we have seen here, this kind of thing. So you can build one such component. Like for example, here they have built one component called thumbnail. Yeah. So and like button. Yeah. So this is the like button, right? So this is a component basically created using React.js. Yeah. So we can build such component. Once you build such component, then using component, for example, using thumbnail and using like button and putting them in a right way, I can actually start building this whole user interface. Once you have this section, then I can actually start building and using that section, using appropriate programming structures, I can actually start building more complicated user interfaces. Yeah. So that's what exactly you will start writing components, which is essentially going to be some sort of JavaScript code and markup, like the look and feel and the code functionality. And once we have that component, we can actually start building more complicated user interfaces. Yeah. Then you can start adding interactivity. Like for example, I can think about filtering. I can start handling the events. For example, I can like a video, for example. So like this, the user interactivity can be added. Yeah. And again, this is all about event handling, etc. So I can build the component. I can start adding basically the interactivity that component, and then I can start using these components to produce more meaningful, complicated user interfaces. Yeah. Or even using the React.js, you can actually go full stack. Even though React.js itself is just a UI library, you can actually go full stack using the extended platforms or the frameworks on top of React, like Next.js, Remix type of thing. Yeah. So you can actually do a full-fledged database operations, the page-to-page navigation, so many things using the extended frameworks like Next.js. But then to use Next.js, you have to understand how React work. You have to you should know the React way of working. Then you can start using Next.js. Yeah. So this is how basically React.js is all about. So if I go back, so essentially React is a JavaScript library for creating user interfaces for web as well as native UI. Yeah. So it allows you to build complex UI, but we are not directly going to build complex UI. Rather, we'll start building simple building blocks called components. Yeah, once your components are ready, you can actually independently test the component, check whether it is working properly or not. And then once such multiple components are built, you can start putting them like ingredient for your food, right? And the good part of it is these components, like for example, in your YouTube, we have seen like is another component, views is another component, video player is a component. All these components can be independently developed by different people, different teams, etc. And once these are independently developed, you can actually put them together and make more meaningful UI. So that's called composing the UI using components. Yeah. And on top of that, React allows you to actually write something called JSX, which is JavaScript extension, which is essentially allowing you to put your markup and code together. By default, your HTML is different, JavaScript is different, right? But using JSX, we can actually start writing markup, which is like HTML type of code, as well as code, the JavaScript type of code in one place. Yeah. We need not worry about two different files and linking them and all that stuff. Yeah. You can obviously add interactivity because user interfaces are meant for interaction with end users. So you can actually add interactivity using React.js. React comes with ready-made events or functions, etc. So using that, you can actually start building interactive data-driven applications. Yeah. And obviously, like you can use other frameworks like Next.js or Remix, which are built on top of React to build your full stack applications. Yeah. And very important thing is using React, you can actually reuse the same skills, the JavaScript skills, for developing web applications as well as native applications. We need not learn separate languages for developing iOS or Android apps. So that's the benefit that React comes with. We have similar frameworks like Angular as well as Vue.js. They are different, but React.js is the dominant library that is being used currently. Yeah, so you can do a quick check like React versus Angular, React versus Vue.js, just to understand the differences and similarities between these frameworks and the libraries basically. But then in this course, we'll stick to React.js. Yeah. So in the next video, we'll start with basically our first project on React.js. So we'll start building from scratch. So we'll not be using any software or any tool or anything locally. So we'll build everything on a cloud-based environment called Code Sandbox. So our first project will be completely on the browser-based development. Yeah. Thank you.